Well, hi everyone. Welcome. I'm Meghan Biro from TalentCulture, and I'm playing MC today. I'm so excited to be here with Sanjoe Jose of Talview and Chad Fife of Talview. We're sort of like one big happy family here today, and we are here for coffee and conversation with each of you. Uh, Chad, I know you and Sanjoe are very excited to talk about candidate experience, recruiting experience, and we're ready to kind of just dive in. So I'm going to turn this over to you.
That sounds great. Thank you, Megan. Sanjoe and I at Talview have enjoyed a good relationship with TalentCulture. The folks there are great. So we're excited to be here today and talking about the next frontier in candidate and recruiter experience, a coffee and conversation webinar with TalentCulture. So generating real human connections is really a recruiter's first and last job, and that sets the stage for the entire presentation today. We're going to split it up into a couple parts. I'm going to talk about candidate experience, some trends, some best practices, what we're seeing with our Talview clients as far as how the candidates are rating their experiences with us on video interviews, remote online assessments, and recruiting chatbots and other functions like that, how that process is going for them. Is it fast? Is it convenient? Is it intuitive? And then I'm going to show how really candidates and recruiters want the same thing. And actually, that's my next slide. I kind of gave it up. I kind of gave the punchline, but do candidates and recruiters want the same thing? Can you drive both personalization for candidates and efficiency for recruiters in one process? As I said, I'm going to talk about the candidate experience, and I'll pass it to Sanjoe, our CEO and co-founder, to talk about the recruiter experience and how AI and technology also speeds up the process, but in a very cool way helps candidates too. And why do I start with this question? Why do I start with it? Do they want the same thing? You could say, well, sure, of course they do. Both want to find a great match, but is that always the case? Are companies always giving the right fast experience that's intuitive? Are they giving feedback, right? How do you give feedback when you're getting thousands of applications? Are you just worried about the top 5% that you will make, a short list and you'll make a finalist? So it's an interesting and introspective question, which is, do they want the same thing? And we're going to attempt to go through some trends and answer that question.
Chad, that is such a great question, because the irony going on these days is that recruiting success is measured in results, but with so much uncertainty we're in the midst of this global pandemic, it's always hard to measure. So I think the objective should be clarifying the factors of success here and then working to improve them, right? So coming up with objectives for both sides of the equation is essential. And as you mentioned, it's not an easy solution. I'm so glad. It's a hard question, really.
It is a hard question. We're going to attempt to break it down the best we can using some experiences and ideas. We hope to have a follow-up webinar where we talk even more about that question, because that's not a question that's going to be answered simply in one conversation.
Absolutely not.
Why is the candidate experience important? What's driving it at top organizations? I think we all know why it's important, but really what's driving it? I tried to dig into that a little bit, and I'm excited to talk about it. So as we think about our consumer lives, right? Spotify changed my family's life about a year ago. I mean, we were all like, I've got teenagers, boys, girls, wife, me, all liking different music. What do we, when we're on the road traveling, what do we tune into? And so apps like Spotify just let you scale personalization really well. Now, in the job process, how would that work in an Apple or Spotify or Amazon-like environment? The candidate might go, hey, Apple, I'd love a job. And Apple would go, great, we've been expecting your app. Yeah, you didn't know this, but we did assess you, and you did do a quick video interview when you were at XYZ university a year ago. We were hoping you'd apply at some point in the future. Candidate says, awesome, I can't wait to meet the team. And Apple says, great, look, you've got a 97% skills match and personality match with some successful people at our company. Let's schedule a session. Really, what Apple and Spotify and Amazon are really doing, if you think about it, they're using technology to automate the front end of an experience to essentially be more personalized and human at some part of that experience. And in a job funnel, if you were to think about a shape that would describe recruiting today, you could think of it as a bow tie. I don't have a bow tie on today, but you could think of it as one where it's wide at the ends because you use automation to broadcast your message, and it's very humanized and personalized in the middle, because that's where you want that great connection point with the recruiter, hiring manager, and the candidate.
I love that we have humanized right in the middle. And I'd like to say, as somebody who's been around recruiting for most of my career experience, I think this is the first time I've seen a bow tie just like that. So kudos to you, Chad.
Thank you.
Looking spiffy.
Yeah. maybe the next webinar I'll wear one. So we've heard about some of the whys, I think, in any of us all of us, I think would be part of HR if we're on this webinar in some way. Even if we're not, we're part of a company where the human factor is key because it's our biggest asset and expense as well. So we want to get the most out of it. So in looking at the candidate experience, there was a popular scenario a few years ago in the HR media that said Virgin Media, they essentially lost a lot of money, $5 million, because of a candidate experience process, which one of the stats is 41% who have a bad experience as an applicant will consider not buying from you. Well, that happened with Virgin. So the 41% didn't like Virgin as much, but what was the actual delta in people, unsubscribing, who maybe had been candidates and applied, but they were also using a Virgin Media consumer service, and it was 6%. So 6% actually put their money where their mouth was. Wow. Out of the 41%, they actually unsubscribed from the service, and that cost Virgin $5 million. Our friends at the Talent Board, great, experts on the candidate experience. And in fact, I almost can't even talk about candidate experience without mentioning them a few times. They're so synonymous. Kevin Grossman and the team there. The fairness or the perceived fairness of your process can impact your brand by 176%. And that means things like you're going to get less Facebook fans or followers. And it's going to affect how many people want to apply, because they don't have that initial great feeling when they think about, I want to work for a great retailer, like my daughter works for Urban Outfitters. And she obviously had to have a great experience, probably as a consumer first, in order to want to apply. It affects revenue, and then it affects trust.
Speaking of trust, Chad, one thing I want to say as a former recruiter, the objective for sourcing can be simple, right? When I think about sourcing, how I'm doing, I want to be turning every new hire into a friend. And so when I see this stats in front of me from Virgin Media and from my friends at Talent Board, it just makes me sick a little bit. Like, these numbers they're very telling. So as we think about how to be more successful with, sourcing talent, think about turning every new hire into a friend. And maybe we won't have these types of numbers.
Good point. So the Talent Board kind of helped me, and as I researched this for this webinar, and I'm going to get into a few scenarios where we're going to look at how the candidate experience is working for specific companies and their candidates and what they're rating the experience to be. We're going to get into that. But before, I thought about Stephen Covey. I'm from BYU. The Covey family is a big leadership guru name around those parts. And in his book, The 7 Steps of Highly Effective People, talks about 7 steps, ways to be effective, build trust. So I took that and said, what are the 7 steps of highly effective hiring processes and experiences? The first 4 are from Talent Board. I did rename the first one a little bit to Start Strong. They have set expectations, but you need to really start strong in everything you're doing and set the expectations, set the timeline. The second thing is respect time. Use short assessments where possible. Don't require a 60-minute assessment that everyone on the front end has to do in order for them to even be looked at, right? Be thoughtful about the time it takes and automate. Be fair, right? Use bias reducing tools. Worry about the bias that you may have in some of your processes and tools, and use structured interviews so that one rating of a candidate is apples to apples to another person who's rating a candidate, because the similar questions are being asked on the front end. Give feedback. We hear that a lot. And then Talview, I would propose, would offer a couple of more. And this would be offer options, accept multiple modes of evaluation. You know, think about a future state. And this, maybe we're not all doing this now. Think about a future state that says, you know, your first step and way to evaluate us is either A, watch a job preview video and go through some realistic job preview questions to see what it's like on the job by answering some of these scenario questions of what it's like to work in our store or our factory or, you know, with this team. Or, you know, if you want to do this video interview and answer these 3 questions right now, we'd be happy to take either, right? I'm not saying that anyone's doing it this way. I'm saying let's think about offering options, because as we all know, people are more anxious and nervous or talented, and they can show their true personal gifts in different ways. And we don't want to just, you know, remove really talented people from the process by just being real strict in the way that we, you know, want to assess. And then let people use multiple devices. So make sure everything is device friendly. Number 6, personalize to the job type. You know, obviously think about the type of job, a sales job, a project manager job, and the scenarios and the assessments and the interview questions that should be asked for those specific jobs. I used to work in the assessment space exclusively. Now I'm at Talview, where it's recruiting in a more broad sense and our Insta hiring process. And they had something called face validity. And in the testing world, you want your assessment to be pretty face valid so that people don't get annoyed that you're asking questions that don't relate to customer service at all. And they wonder, am I going to be you know, left out of this recruiting process by answering poorly on this test that doesn't seem to be related in any way. And then the last is finalize. You know, give every candidate a finalization of, are you a silver medalist? Look, you were really close.
Yeah.
And we hope to utilize, you know, your application in the future and really mean that, right? If they were really close, I've been a silver medalist a few times in my executive career. I think we all have.
Yeah.
Like one time I was not told, this is very, very true. One time I was not told I was the second choice for 30 days after my in-person interview.
Ooh.
That they flew me across the country and I was not told for 30 days. The funny thing about that is actually I got another job in those 30 days.
Yeah.
Now they ultimately, right, they had their person, but it left a very sour taste in my mouth. It's still to this day, it's extremely sour. So these smiley faces could just be like a version of a bubble sheet that you can mark yourself, you know, in dark in one, and kind of bubble that in and see how you're doing with a happy face, an average face, or a sad face.
Chad, I can't tell you how many brands I've seen go through 1 to 6 in a brilliant manner, but completely lose sight of 7. And when you lose sight of 7 and you're not giving that finalization, you are closing opportunities. To your point, silver. What about bronze? What about 4th and 5th? it's a missing opportunity for
I
so
still
many.
can't even want to bring myself to want to connect with the two executives that I spent all day
Yeah,
with years ago. I still can't. I can't believe that they didn't
right.
follow up with me. Um,
Exactly.
and then the recruiter said, "Oh, by the way, we thought about you forever, but we
Mm-hmm.
decided not to go with you." That's good to know. Um, okay, so moving along, because I want to be conscious of the time. So we at Talview work with a lot of great organizations, a lot of consulting organizations. Global organizations is a key, trait for who we look at that can utilize the Talview service and instant hiring process to the fullest. And so ZS Associates is one of our customers. Um, and this is a little bit inside the experience with them that produces a 4.5 out of 5 rating. These are the candidates. And by the way, this is not like 88 candidates. I mean, this is thousands of candidates, tens of thousands of candidates that are rating us. And so it's not a bad rating when you've got, tens of thousands of people going through. We have a branded portal at the beginning. We have some videos about the company, like a lot of companies do. Where I think we excel for ZS is we offer a video job description. So we work with ZS to, in this case, this person's a business operations manager, and he is describing what it's like to be a business operations associate. And that's a real differentiator. People they like to see that inside, almost like who I'd be working for. It doesn't have to be the person you'd be reporting to, but that helps a lot in this process. And this entire process where they go through and apply a multiple choice test and a video interview, 80% are now using their mobile phones to do this. And before we started with ZS, it was 30%. One other great customer, Enel, in Italy, an energy company in Italy. They have slightly lower rating. We're a little bit earlier on with them, and we're gonna, work to improve, like we do with any customer. We also have branded portals. They're quite beautiful, as you can see. No, it's a little hard to see this. We also have company videos. One thing that's unique here, there's a reason why I put this slide for this presentation. We have audio instructions for each screen. So as a candidate goes through the different elements of apply or take this multiple choice or take this, quick personality test, the instructions can be in the language of the applicant, in this case, either Romanian or Italian. And that seems to help as well. And then different parts of the process, candidates are able to give their feedback. And I just added here, how could we improve? Maybe we add a practice interview module at some point in the beginning part of the process so that first timers are more comfortable. Could be something that we could do. Other companies innovating, Intermountain Healthcare went from a regionalized to a centralized recruiting function, and it really helped because as great second and third and fifth choices of a recruiter were in one city or region, previously they would not get any more, they wouldn't go forward in the process. But now recruiters are sharing great candidates across different regions of the country, especially as we're working from home more. But they're even asking candidates if they want to, relocate if they were great in, let's say, Atlanta's process. Actually, Intermountain is probably not in Atlanta. It's a West Coast. It's in Utah. It's in Idaho. So it'd be Utah and Idaho, where those facilities could share candidate information. Vodafone. What was interesting with them is they optimize their career site for Google for Jobs. Google for Jobs, or when you say I have customer service and I'm in Carmel, Indiana, which is where I'm at, that I'll see everything related to those jobs right near me. They optimize their site to get better traffic from localized listings, and they did. They ended up getting 24% of all visitors completing applications, and their process was much faster. And then Children's Mercy Hospital, what they did is they were getting a great applicant flow and hiring, like it was fine, but they were thinking they might be missing out on jewels and gems in the process because of all the medical jargon in all the job descriptions. Not that someone wouldn't have to know that technical skill, of course they would, but maybe in getting to know the company and the job, if they remove some of that medical jargon and got more personalized about the culture of Children's Mercy, that would help. And so what they ask people to do is just submit videos of why you want to work for us, and we promise we will respond to that video. And actually that last part's really important. When you ask someone to do something specific in your hiring process and you say, if you do this, we will respond and give you feedback, that can be great as a job seeker, because you know if you invest a little time, you are going to get feedback, because no one wants to spend a bunch of time on a homework assignment or a long assessment if they know that no one's really going to get back to them. One more thing, and then we're going to pass it over to Sanjoe to talk about the recruiter experience. Actually, 2 more slides, but this one is my daughter. My daughter's at Utah State University. She chose between Purdue, where we're from in Indiana, where we live. We're actually not from Indiana. We've only been here 5 years or 6 years. But she chose between Purdue and Utah State. Utah State did an amazing job that I think HR teams can learn from. She was an athlete, although she wasn't recruited there as an athlete. We did go on another recruiting visit. So kind of my thoughts are all around these couple of visits that she did. One as a track athlete and being recruited, and another as just a student at Utah State, where she's not running track, at least yet. Social, they plugged her into who's on Instagram of freshmen at Utah State.
I love that.
She could interact with them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do you even know these people? I'm like, well, of course, kids know how to find everything these days on social. But this guy right there in the picture would also email her and say, you might want to check out, these incoming freshmen in this social app and kind of meet them. They also did really well with actually this gentleman right there. They also did very well getting myself and my wife excited about the process with some parent podcasts and things. And then the school itself, meaning the actual department, the business school that she's going to join, the Huntsman School of Business that she had to apply for even as an undergrad, they were really good as well. So I think HR can learn from schools and anyone who's got teenagers going to college. Just look at what different schools are doing, and they're really tapping into that whole person, I think. And what's this a way to parallel this with HR? Imagine if you wanted to go after a top sales rep or a top programmer, a top leader, and you said something in your application about, like, I don't know, like the restaurant choices around. I mean, it's funny because we're COVID and working from home, but let's just say we're back at the office, and it would say, the restaurant choices right around our office are amazing, and they include, this restaurant, this one, and here's a $20, because you kind of in the short list, here's a $20 or whatever, $30 coupon to go there with your wife. I would immediately go look good to my wife because of this company. And I wouldn't tell her I got it from this job application. I just say, hey, we're going to go to whatever place. So I think people can learn from schools. Interestingly, I didn't find a lot of innovation around how to measure candidate experience. Obviously, there's surveys. Obviously, there's rate what you're doing. I do want to talk about real quickly net promoter score, having a lot of promoters and not detractors from your process, and getting the promoters to be, wanting to improve that. How do you do that? So right now, I would say there's actually an opportunity to measure CX in innovative ways. And I would suggest to people that maybe quality of hire surveys are a route to take. It's really hard to get people in any process to maybe give you all the feedback that you want. Like, is this a good assessment process? How was the interview? DocuSign did figure out a way. They asked questions like, was your recruiter giving you a good overview? Did your recruiter provide you with timely updates? Did your recruiter treat you with respect throughout the process? and they were able to up their NPS score. But I would say look at some interesting quality of hire surveys that, I think are still yet to be discovered. I don't think we've figured out how to measure candidate experience in the best ways yet. The last thing that I'll mention before passing it Sanjoe or Meghan is everyone wants to beat hiring lag, is what I've seen in my own life and at Talview. The recruiter wants to beat hiring lag, and lag I would define as the light green. So in this picture, lag is the light green, dark green are the tasks that are productive. So a recruiter has quite a lot of tasks to do in creating a job requisition, sharing, reviewing resumes, sending out assessment links, finding interview times after you've shortlisted some folks, scheduling a live interview, right? All that process, comparing notes with other interview panel members, which, by the way, Talview has a new integration with Microsoft Teams that makes that easy to have multiple people interview and then compare notes. But if you look at the candidate, here's the problem. The candidate has more light green than the recruiter. So while the recruiter wants to improve hiring lag, the candidate's just waiting around forever. It can be 6 days before an all-star candidate gets any feedback, 10 days before they're asked to take an assessment, and they get that jolt of excitement and energy, like, yes, this great employer that I want to work for is responding to me, and I can tell it's a human that's looked at my resume and wants me to take this assessment. So as Sanjoe talks about what recruiters are doing, let's consider that both sides want a fast process. Fast doesn't mean we were impatient, didn't think about dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and we picked a candidate that happened to be breathing and we needed someone tomorrow, right? That doesn't mean that's what a lot of people think is a fast process. What we mean at Talview by a fast, speedy hiring process is it's like a consumer app. It's like ordering something on Amazon. It's like picking your song on Spotify from your playlist. There's no lag between the excitement that you have of that job and the first step to proving that you should get that job, or the second step. It's the lag between the hiring process steps that Talview is on a mission to decrease. And with that, we'll send it back to you, Meghan, to introduce Sanjoe.
Sanjoe, thank you for being here with everybody. And I know you've been busy working the chat function over there. Good for you. And thank you, everyone, for being here with us. We're so loving the energy today. So, Sanjoe, I know you have tons of sage when it comes to talking about not only candidate experience, but how we drive technology to make everyone's lives easier. So take it away from here.
Thanks, Meghan. Chad, wonderful presentation. Thanks for sharing those personal stories. I think it makes it all the more real. I'm going to keep turn off my video because I think I've been getting notifications that my connection is unstable, probably because my kids in the elementary school, they're also doing their online classes.
The struggle is real, Sanjoe, for you and so many of us right now working remotely. So, we're all keeping it human here today, right?
Yeah. So great. So I think the last slide which Chad presented about what's the kind of experience which candidates are expecting, because this is the age of instant gratification, whether you're on Amazon or on DoorDash, you're always, as a consumer, used to instant gratification, and that's the kind of experience which candidates look for. And but as a recruiter or as an employer, you have this constant struggle of, you have so many applications, you're working on probably so many different requisitions at any given point of time. And now with COVID, and in fact, one of the attendees here posted a question that with remote jobs, the number of applicants per job is almost 10 to 15 times. So you have more people applying for every requisition or every job opportunity which you're posting out there. So how do you really keep it real, and how do you ensure that your candidate experience stays at par or rather improve to what it was before COVID. And that's where we are going to focus on in this part of the presentation, really how recruiters need to operate in the post-COVID world. And I'm going to kickstart with this particular slide. So this is actually a survey which Talview did before COVID. So we always talk to our customers, talk to the rest of the industry to try and understand what's their readiness for adopting technology to digitize their entire hiring experience. And obviously, the one thing which came out was recruiters amongst all the stakeholders who are involved in the hiring process are probably the ones who are most comfortable with remote interactions because they are used to talking to the candidates all phone. Sometimes it's a video call, or sometimes it's emails. So recruiters are already the first interactions which are driven by recruiters are already remote. So they can in many ways be play the lead role in this transition from offline in-person interactions to rich video-based interactions. When it comes to hiring managers, though, it's a completely different story. So 82% of hiring managers before COVID preferred in-person interaction with candidates. So I think there is this strong urge as humans,
Hmm.
which each of us
Yeah.
have in all our personal interactions. But I think for hiring managers, because they are entrusted with making a decision on whether the candidate is the right fit for the role, they always felt that they could do a better job when they're meeting this person in person rather than over a video call or any other format of virtual communication. And that has changed post COVID. Today almost 90% of talent interactions, not just interviews, your interactions with your team members, your appraisal, your learning sessions, everything across what we call the talent life cycle is now virtual. So I think we need to be ready to cope up with that. And given that recruiters have played and have always been remote in their candidate interactions, I think this is a great opportunity for recruiters or recruit us as a recruitment industry to drive this change and put ourselves in the leading role to drive the change across your organization. And obviously, when you look at employers, less than 26% were using video interviews before COVID. So that's the world. So you had recruiters who are using virtual interactions, hiring managers who preferred in-person interactions, and the most of these employers did not have any dedicated platform for managing their hiring interactions with the candidate.
Hmm. Wow.
Chad, can you move to the next slide? So one of the first things which we did, and this is back in March or April, when our customers, so we had customers who had to overnight, customers like Amazon, who had to overnight not just shift their recruitment process completely digital or completely virtual, but also increase the number of hires. So some of them went through like 3 to 4x increase in hires almost in a frame of 30 to 45 days. And we were part of that iterative process, which helped these customers to adjust to the new normal. And we broadly, based on our experience, I think in the past 6 months working with many such customers who are now digitizing their entire hiring experience, we broadly put it in three buckets. So the first thing is about strategic planning. I think this is pretty straightforward. Any change, any new initiative which you're doing, you need to ensure that you're having a plan, and that in this particular case, the plan is all about do you have the, and we have this I would say approach which we call people, technology, and process. So you need to evaluate your plan from all those standpoints, ensure that you have the right technology, ensure that you have the right people leading that initiative, and third is ensure that you have the process which is the right process. So many times we have the tendency, especially when you're doing a digitization exercise, of trying to replicate the process which you had offline as much as possible on an online tool. But that often leads to, I would say, issues which decrease the efficiency of the entire transformation exercise significantly. So relooking at the process becomes a critical part of that strategic planning. Then the second component, and probably one of the areas where a lot of our customers are spending a lot of time, is in terms of planning that candidate experience and communication. Before, if in a pre-COVID world, or in a scenario where the candidates were walking into an office for being part of the hiring process, there is obviously the interaction with the hiring manager, where they're learning about the role, learning about the person they're going to work for, but they also learn a lot about the work culture, the nature of people in the office environment, through those visits. They interact with the receptionist who is giving them a warm welcome when they're coming in. They interact, they visit probably the coffee room, or whatever you call it, in those offices. So essentially, the lot of those, I would say, unstructured interactions, along with a lot of the non-verbal or the visual cues which the candidate used to get as a part of the hiring process, are missing today. And Chad did touch upon how ZS Associates, one of our customers, is now recreating that entire experience on a virtual platform by through a 360-degree walkthrough of their office environment, interaction, and videos from their leaders, videos from the employees, uh, kind of recreating that entire experience, so that for the candidate, it's a big decision when they decide to either leave an existing employment, or join you, or start their career with you. So ensuring that there is consistent experience, and more importantly, constant communication about what the process will be, because many times a lot of nuances which gets communicated in in-person meetings do not happen when things are virtual. So ensuring that the process is very detailed, each and every step. And Chad spoke about how not hearing from the recruiter or the employer is such a I believe such a disappointing experience for every candidate. So ensuring that the process is very clear. This is how we are going to go through the process, and these are the different steps. These are the technologies which we are going to use, and these are the people whom you can reach out if you have any questions, you have technical issues. All of that becomes very critical. And the last aspect is change management internally. And this is essentially working with your hiring managers, because a lot of these hiring managers are struggling with coping up with the change, especially with virtual interviewing or managing interactions with the candidate in the virtual world. Some of them turn up late to the interview. Some of them now the additional thing is, many of these interactions, when they're happening on the virtual world, they're also getting recorded. So you want to ensure that you're not asking any questions which are not supposed to ask. So do they have understanding of how to do a legally compliant interview? This also, and I'll talk about that in subsequent slides, also is a tremendous opportunity for you to build interview feedback loops, so that your quality of interviews increase in your organization and your quality of hiring improves. But essentially, working with the hiring managers who 82% of them who traditionally preferred in-person interactions, becomes very critical part of this entire process. And one single element which we have seen as we being a technology organization, or otherwise being a significant enabler across this transition, is technology. Chad, can we move to the next slide? Unfortunately, and I think this is probably one of the challenges a lot of us had to deal with, and at Talview, this is probably what we are helping our customers to solve for from day one, is the fact that the way talent technology, or the technology architecture exists today, it's archaic. It's not built for the virtual world. It's offline. There are a lot of manual activities which a recruiter has to do, right from scheduling an interview or following up with the uh, hiring manager for feedback. A lot of these things which is taking their valuable time away from creating those experiences which the employer or the company would want to create for the candidate. And there is very little learnings, and that these systems are unintelligent, that in spite of companies doing hundreds of interviews or hundreds of hires every year, there is very little learning from these processes, because all of it is happening offline and there is no way of capturing this information to improve your process. Can we move to the next slide, Chad? And that's so essentially that's where we've seen, and this is a framework which we've been using for our customers almost from day one. We look at technology in three buckets. So we call it remote, automate, and reuse. So essentially, remote is straightforward. You digitize the entire experience, whether it's video interviewing, video proctoring, if you're using any form of written assessments where you want to ensure the validity of the assessment. So all of those aspects come in the first bucket. Second is automation, where whether it's matching a resume with a job description or using a bot to handle the initial interaction with the candidate so that they know they're applying for the right role and the role meets their uh, qualifications. That along with the aspects like scheduling. So anything which is routine, repetitive, if we can automate that so that the recruiter can focus on finding the right candidates and bringing them into the organization by building those experiences which we spoke about. I think that's what automate is all about. And the third is reuse, where essentially the ability to reuse all the data which is getting generated. And Chad again spoke about this. So if you have a candidate who was a silver medalist 2 months back for a very similar role, and you now there is a new role and you are reaching out back to that candidate, asking them to go through the same interview process, the same assessments, is probably the most inefficient and most I would say, a very poor candidate experience. So reusing everything which you have so that the new hiring manager can pull out the interview recordings, look at that, the past reports, and then say that, hey, you've already gone through this process. We liked you last time. So why don't you move directly to a step 5 or a step 7 rather than starting from scratch? That's what reuse is all about. And in addition to that, all the learnings and intelligence which you can drive from all these interactions so that you can build a process which evolves with learnings from every year or every month. The two examples here, the first one, HCL, who has been working with us for almost 3 years right now. They have digitized their entire hiring process with the help of proctored assessments and video interviews. And what they have been able to achieve is they have reduced the turnaround time by 40% across their hiring process, and their recruiter efficiency went up by almost 60%. So significant value which has been generated over a period of time. But you don't necessarily have to, so the value can be realized almost immediately. And that's why I included the second case study, which is of Nestle, who moved their online assessments with video proctoring using Talview, and look at how their recruiter efficiency improved almost overnight. A single recruiter was able to screen 24,000 candidates, and this was actually for graduate hiring, where they hired almost 15 amazing new hires in less than 40 days. So that's the kind of impact which technology has been able to make. At the same time, all of this was done with a significant focus on candidate experience.
Hey, Sanjoe, it's Megan here. I have to say, I love all of this when it comes to saving recruiters time, but to me, reuse, not making people go through those first 2 to 4 steps is huge. Recruiter efficiency went up by 60%. To me, that really stands out.
No, I think reuse is probably one of the, like you rightly said, Megan, one of the most under
Yeah.
uh, utilized aspect of recruiting, because you have these amazing candidates whom you come across,
Yeah.
and then 2 months or 3 months later, you're reaching out to the same candidate, it how much change in experience can it be,
Right.
where you can just pick up the phone and say that, hey, we really liked you last time, and there is this new hiring manager who has
Mm-hmm.
seen your profile, who has seen your interviews, and you can probably walk in and accept the job offer. Or like today,
Yes.
in a video call with the hiring manager, and if you like that person, you can directly get a job offer. Why do you have to go through that entire process all over again?
Totally agree.
Chad,
I
let's.
promise I know how to fast forward slides. It's just a little touchy today. There we
Yay.
go.
Thank you. It's all good. Thank you, everyone, for being here and staying engaged with us. This is amazing.
And I think, and this is, I touched upon a lot of these aspects in previous slides, but essentially the future and the way we look at how digitization is going to improve the recruiter experience, and through that, even the candidate experience, is through how AI can be leveraged to analyze, slice and dice every interaction which is happening on the platform, whether it's interviews, whether it's assessments, and ensure that there is a consistent feedback loop for the recruiter, for the interviewer, so that they can improve their uh, the way they perform their role in their recruiting process. And this kind of learning can lead to building a hiring process which will help you to keep yourself ahead of competition. If you're making offers faster than your competition, if you're delivering a great candidate experience which is unmatched, and that really becomes the crux of what can differentiate you from rest of the industry in the post-COVID world.
Hey, Sanjo,
Hmm.
we have a question here for you from Scott Hager.
I was just responding, but let's have
Oh,
Sandra respond. No, let's have
fantastic.
Sandra.
Yeah,
So,
no, yeah,
hey,
sorry.
Scott, shout outs. I love this question. Can you describe at a medium level of detail the role of AI? What does the AI actually do?
Yeah, I was actually going to talk about that in the next slide.
Perfect.
If we can go to the next slide. So essentially, this is a case study, and Chad already spoke about this customer NL from a candidate experience standpoint. But one of their biggest challenges when they started working with us a year back has been the lack of consistency with their quality of hire. So they had this hiring managers across different countries who are doing interviews, who are great with evaluating the technical fitment of these candidates for the role, but were always having challenges with understanding the behavioral fitment of these candidates for these roles. And that's where Talview came into picture, where we use a technique called psycholinguistics. It's basically a combination of AI technologies like speech recognition with natural language processing, where we are able to build a behavioral profile of the candidate based on the video interview which happens on the platform, so that when an interview happens, you're not just getting the feedback from the hiring manager, who is a great resource to evaluate the technical fitment of the candidate, but you're also getting a behavioral profile which essentially says that for this role, let's say it's a customer facing role, so you are looking at behavioral aspects like empathy, or you're, let's say you're for you're looking for teamwork, or any kind of behavioral competencies which are required to perform a particular role. We give a behavioral fitment report, which then becomes an equal or important component of the hiring decision, which added significant consistency to the quality of hires which NL had. And today we are working with them to roll out that to newer geographies as we speak. But not just this, the same capabilities can be extended beyond uh, uh, automated evaluation to even building feedback loops. So for example, we spoke about how can we use this to improve the quality of interviews itself. So today, no, almost 90% of hiring decisions are based on interviews, but there is no formal training for interviewers before they start interviewing. All of us come with our own bias in the entire process. We do not have a technique on day one, but over a period of time, through trial and error, we build our own technique. But nobody is really uh, giving you feedback. Nobody is, you cannot compare yourself with the rest of the industry. There are no industry benchmarks. And that's a
Mm.
problem which is impacting the quality of hire across organizations for so many years. And that's what one aspect which again digitization can change. So today all these interviews are on a digital platform where we can analyze those interactions. We can look at aspects like right from legal compliance, like are they asking questions which are not illegal, or questions which they're not supposed to ask? Are they focusing on the job description? Are they asking questions which are relevant? Are they probing the candidate so that the candidate gets an opportunity to demonstrate their suitability for the role? Are they uh, talking about the company in the right manner so that the candidate remains excited about the company and its culture? Are they giving the candidate enough time to speak? So all of those aspects can be understood, and this becomes a feedback for the interviewer and also for the organization, so that they can do interventions which will consistently improve the quality of these interviews, and through that the quality of hires. And
Sanjoe, we have about 7 minutes left, but we probably want to end a few minutes early. Now
yeah,
6 minutes.
yeah, I think this is probably the second last slide. So essentially from our standpoint, the way we look at, so you have all these technologies which are focused on today, especially when it comes to recruitment, whether it's applicant tracking systems or all kind of tools which are automating the workflow, or doing automation of like tasks like scheduling or matching and all of that. But we see that decision enablement and remote enablement is the area which is emerging, and that's where a lot of customers we are speaking to, they are making their investments. And that's really where we see a lot of our own roadmap is aligned to. And we see that that's the category which is emerging, and that's a category of remote teams in future. Next slide, Chen. Yeah, so Chad, I would let you
Yeah.
summarize the key takeaways, and Meghan, from your side, would love to hear your thoughts before we conclude.
I think for me, Megan, and then maybe you can end the call, the webinar. For me, we've talked about candidates, guiding them, personalizing processes, being transparent. And then I didn't talk about it at length, but actually when I went into this webinar research, I wanted to answer this question better. I just couldn't decide how to measure the candidate experience. I don't think there's enough innovative tools out there today that are really measuring this experience well. I said one was just look at your quality of hire. We at Talview certainly use in-app surveys that let candidates give us their feedback. But I just didn't find anything that was really special out there. So there's ways to improve. And then with recruiters, it's building a remote tech stack. We're using the data as Megan and Sanjoe talked about, and using AI both on the candidate experience side and Sanjoe touched on a little bit, could be a whole other webinar, but using AI to coach the interviewer on how to best ask questions and relate the value proposition of the company. And then both candidates and recruiters want to use technology to speed up the lag, which is that dead, wasted time between processes that many consumer apps these days have solved. And that's why we love our Spotify's and Amazon purchases. They've figured out a way to close that gap. But then AI can help both sides reach their goals faster. Megan, any brilliant last minute thoughts from you and on the subject? No pressure.
Yeah, really. Jeez. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts. I thought this was just a really awesome webinar today. You know, the most successful recruiters I know maintain contact with everyone they place and everyone they source. They treat the talent in their pipelines as valued friends and colleagues. It's not a one and done situation. I think everyone always has to have their ear to the ground, right? And when we talk about creating a culture of connection, tending to the technology, as we've talked about today, is going to be key as we go forward, and finding that balance between being a human and being tech savvy. I mean, making sure that every single channel is up to date, consistent, and mobile capable is so important. And also just showing up as your best self, being human. It's going to be a balance as we go forward. So hopefully this,
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, I think that's it. And all we wanted to say next was here's our website, talview.com. We help people with their remote hiring transition, from the process to the technology to the metrics, to really track that whole process. And that's how you can send an email to safehiring@talview.com. You can go to talview.com, and we're really excited to have had a great group on the call today. And I think we'll end there. So everyone have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone. It's been so much fun.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a
Bye.
good day.